Hello, everyone, and welcome to Africa Fire Mission's weekly virtual training session. My name is Mike. I'm the programs director here at Africa Fire Mission, and I'm so happy that you took time out of your busy schedules to join us for today's training. Today, we're joined by Chief Brad Banz. Brad's done a little bit of everything: paid firefighter, volunteer firefighter, captain, chief. He teaches all sorts of classes, hazmat to power lines, which we're going to talk about today. He's everybody's favorite grandpa. So we're glad that Pappy Brad's here to join us for today's training session. Before we get started, just a couple of administrative notes. If you stick around for at least 70% of today's training, which is usually about 40 or 45 minutes, I'll send you a certificate of attendance for today's class. If you get cut off or something happens, you can't make it for all that time, we do have a Google Drive where you can find the materials. You can watch the video recording, answer a few questions, and get yourself that certificate of attendance. I'll place a link to that in the chat later on. You can also find that at the Africa Fire Mission webpage, africafiremission.org. Go to the resources. We have all sorts of excellent free resources there for you. Please check that out. Utilize all of those. With us also today is Jose Najiri. He is Africa Fire Mission's Fire Safety Officer, and he's going to get us started here with a few words of encouragement.
All righty. Thank you so much, Chief Mike, and thank you so much, Brad, for coming through. I truly appreciate you. And everybody else, wow, it's unbelievable. We are more than 47 people in 2 minutes. That to me is amazing. Guys from Zambia, Kenya, of course. We have people from the Middle East, South Africa. I have some guys also. I'm seeing some people from the community that we usually work with, the GRO6. I am truly appreciative all of you guys being here. So today I was just looking at something and I'm like, there's that point whereby people, when they retire, they leave a very big gap in the firehouse. You find a fire chief is there in the firehouse and is about going to 55 years and he's not mentored anybody. Therefore, when they get out of that position, there's a seriously big gap. So what happens, it takes so much effort to actually get to recruit somebody else in that seat. So I came up and thought, how would we get to sort out this matter? Yes, I know that when you have knowledge, that is power. But did you know what? Unless you share that knowledge, that's when you become powerful. Yeah. But when you constrain and keep that message inside you, you're actually not valuable to your firehouse. So, what makes a good mentor? I took some notes. I'm not going to do so much. I've put it in about 5 points, and I'll read them. Number one, for you to become a good mentor so that there's no gap when you retire or when you're sick or when you have to travel, people calling you off the hook. Number one, you have to be a caring person who cares about developing others. That has to be within you. Yeah, I see so much in that in Chief Mike and Chief Brad. They usually mentor me and tell me, hey, this is how to get things moving on some few items. Number two, you need to be motivated and energized. You as the mentor, you need to be motivated and energized. Don't be grumpy. Don't feel like this mentee is wasting your time or taking your energy. No. Number three, you as a mentor, you're willing to commit your time. All right? You need to commit your time consistently. Not 1 week you're here, another 4 weeks you're not there. No, that is actually not mentoring. Number four, a mentor needs to have respect of this mentee, and then also respects the confidentiality, and also just keeps it to himself and advises accordingly. And number five, last but not least, you need to point out confidently my weaknesses. And when you point out my weaknesses, You need to do it in a constructive manner so that it doesn't destroy me. All right. You provide a weakness and then you give me possible ways of providing a strength to that. So that and a lot more, which I'm not going to talk about because of time, I would want you to really consider mentoring somebody so that that position is actually not left blank, but also you have a continuity from when you leave or when you need to give somebody your knowledge. Thank you so much for listening through. Back to you, Chief Mike.
Thank you, Jose. We always appreciate those words. Really good advice there today. Much appreciated. Appreciate everything you do to help out the firefighters throughout all of Africa. I'd like to invite everybody at the top of the hour. We're going to wrap up our formal portion of the training, but then we're going to transition into tea time, and we'll see Jose again. Jose hosts tea time. It's a time where you can ask questions about today's class or discuss anything else that impacts you as a firefighter. It's a great place to do some networking and things like that. So if you've got the bundles available, I'd recommend you all stick around for that as well. I think at this point in time, I'm just going to pass things over to Brad to get things started with today's lesson. Take it away, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Jose. Wise words on the part of Jose this morning. I'd like to just build on that. First of all, thank you, everybody, for joining in. It shows your willingness to learn and try to improve the fire service in your communities. And as our expectations, the reason that we're doing this, the reason that we come into your communities, that we've come to Kenya, to Zambia, to Malawi, is so that you can learn, that we can share our skills and knowledge, and that you can take that and mentor other firefighters. So please listen to the words that Jose shared with you and try to build on that. So anyway, let's go ahead and I'm going to take off with my lesson here. I'll go ahead and share the screen here. Bring that up. There it is. We'll get it started for you. We are doing our lesson on power lines. It's a big thing that we have to deal with as being firefighters in the fire service. And I'm going to not just discuss power lines as part of my lesson plan. I'm going to build off and really talk about the whole power grid in general as part of my lesson plan, just to kind of give you guys an overall view of the power grid and some of the things we have to deal with. Just a little bit of background about myself. Before I got into the fire service, as part of my military service, I was an electronics technician as part of my military service. So I have a little bit of knowledge about electricity and electronics. So that hopefully will help me to explain a little bit. Plus, my father-in-law worked at an electrical generating station, so he helped to teach me a lot about how the system works as well. So hopefully, like I say, that'll help me to be a little bit more thorough as far as teaching the lesson this morning. So I'll go ahead and move on over. So basically, two big objectives. We'll identify the components of the electrical power grid, all the different things that make up the system, and then talk about emergency responses to different parts of the grid. So go ahead and move on up. Talk about our components. So this is a drawing. It's a little bit being blown up like it is. It's a little bit blurry, but hopefully you guys can see it. Bring my pointer in here. First part is going to be your generating system, whichever it may be. Your generators then step up the power to a higher voltage to push it out into the system. And that's pushed out over the big high voltage transmission lines to carry it out to the customers, out to the different various areas throughout the system. And those are the big taller towers. These are high voltage lines that it's carrying them on. And then it has other transformers that step the voltage down to your distribution system. The distribution system is going to be the poles that you're going to see out in your neighborhoods. And then over here on the right, can you guys see this? Okay, my arrow that I'm using to point with. Yeah, okay. These are going to be your lower voltages here that your customers are going to use out in the various neighborhoods. 25 kilovolts, 69 kilovolts. That's your bigger customers. Your industrial customers are going to use 25 kV and 69 kV. They're again, these primary customers here in the middle, they're also going to be your bigger industrial customers as well. And then the residential people are going to be the 120 and 240 that you use. You guys don't use any 120. That's going to be in the US that we use 120. But 240 is what you guys use in but I know in Kenya, I think probably most of Africa. I don't know about the Middle East, what you guys use. But I think most of Africa uses 240 on residential. Okay. Talk about generation. Different types of generation that you might see. Hydroelectric, where you have a dam. You have water that is released and spins a turbine that generates electricity. Wind power spins turbines that produce your electricity. Geothermal, Kenya, a lot of different parts of Africa, you guys have a lot of geothermal. Solar, that's becoming a thing in a lot of the parts of the world. Down here in the far lower right-hand corner here, we have coal. And then in the upper right-hand corner, that's going to be an oil burning plant. The plant that my father-in-law worked at, I told you about my father-in-law. He worked at a plant that burned a combination of oil and natural gas, and they could switch over and burn one or the other. So anyway, and you guys will see a picture of the plant that he worked at here in a few slides. So I know all the systems will usually have a mix. I know you guys in Kenya, I did a little bit of research, and most of yours comes from a mix of hydro and geothermal, and some wind, the wind energy up at Turkana. Here at home, ours, we get about around a third from wind energy. And we also have a lot of coal and natural gas here at home. So anyway, so different areas have different means of generating power. So then, like we were discussing, once that power is generated, it comes off of these turbines here at your generating stations at a fairly low voltage. So it has to be stepped up and pushed out onto the grid. So it's going to have a step-up transformer to do that. And the transformer just basically either boosts voltage or lowers voltage. The reason you want to boost voltage is because you have resistance on your power lines. And so you will boost the voltage to help overcome the resistance in the power lines. And it makes it easier to push that power out over the grid. So that's why they're going to boost that voltage to a higher voltage to help push that power down the grid and overcome the resistance on the lines. Okay. So here's your transmission lines. So these are going to be your cross-country lines. They're carrying a lot of power. These things are dangerous. More dangerous than the ones in your neighborhood are going to be dangerous. These things are super dangerous because they carry a lot of power. They're carrying the power directly from your generating stations out and distributing them out to the system. So they're something that you really have to be aware of if you have a problem with those. So if you see something that looks like the one in the upper left-hand corner up here, that's going to be anywhere from 765,000 volts all the way down to 230,000 volts. A really common one, like in my neighborhood, I have a generating station of about 1.5 kilometers from my house. And it has a big switch yard where they move a lot of power around at. And we have several of these 345 kV lines running in and out of that station. So, and we've had some emergencies on these lines before. So, you really have to be cautious when you're working around these. But anyway, they can look like this and look like this. Down in the lower left-hand corner, you can see guys working on the lines with the helicopters, putting some insulators in. And I've seen them come down the lines around my house doing that. So kind of an interesting picture. So as the voltage gets a little bit lower, whoops, back up here. As the voltage gets a little bit lower, the towers will get a little bit shorter. These are still carrying a lot of voltage, a lot of power on them. In this picture down here on the bottom, darn it, on the bottom here, it's another good example of how the voltage is another way of telling what kind of voltage, what kind of power you might be carrying on these towers. The 69 kV, that's a popular one. It's a lower voltage, but you'll see those around a lot of the neighborhoods. They might actually even be coming out of one of the substations and going through as a distribution line. And then they'll actually drop those in the neighborhood, drop voltages to a lower voltage in the neighborhoods. But these things still carry a lot of power on those as well, even though those are still considered a transmission line. Anyway, so these you really have to be careful around because they're carrying a lot of power. Okay, substation. So what the substations do, they take the power that's coming off those big transmission lines, and they're reducing the voltage on them. And they're taking some of that electric power, not all of it, but they're taking some of it, and they're pulling it off and they're putting it onto a lower voltage distribution line. So you can see up here, this is the pole where you have a 345 kV transmission line. And they're taking some of that electricity, and they're pulling it off and they're reducing it, and they're putting it on out here onto a distribution line that's going to be less than 69. They're not taking all that power. They're just pulling some of it off. And then they're distributing it out to the local customers. That's taking place at the substations, and there will be substations placed strategically throughout the communities based on the usage. There might be a substation put out, like if there's a big industrial area, they might put one out to drop power off for industrial cut for that industrial area. A big residential neighborhood, they might put one out there for that residential neighborhood. Different areas like that where they have a power demand. Okay, then your distribution, different components of your distribution. Okay, we saw one of the power lines, what one of the power lines for your distribution might look like. And this is a really good picture right here, this green picture right here in the middle. Talking about a 25,000 volt medium voltage conductors. Well, that's a 25 kV line. And then it's going to have, so it's got the insulators here that insulate the electricity from going to ground on the poles. Then if you look here, you'll have, it's called a fuse, and that is pulling power down and actually dropping power into another little transformer. This is called another step down transformer, and that's reducing power down even more to the customers, to the customer drops to a usable voltage for the customer, to that 120 and 240 volt customer drops. These line fuses, these things will actually, if there's a short circuit, those things will actually pop, and these things actually will drop and fall down. So a common call that we will get sometimes is an explosion call. And so we will direct our dispatchers to ask them sometimes, did the power go out in that neighborhood if we get a call like that? So, and a lot of times if the power went out, it's because there was a short circuit and one of those fuses has dropped out because there was a short. It'll cause a loud explosion when those popped. So that can be a cause for an explosion call, as those fuses going out. But anyway, these kind of transformers right here reduce this power from a higher voltage coming off of the line to an actual usable voltage going into the customer. Whoops. So where it's coming off the transformer right here, this is going to be actual drop into the customer. This is an actual legal clean drop. This is what's called a weatherhead, and this actually takes the electrical service down and into the customer's building. This is an electrical meter. I don't know if you guys ever take those out to take customer service out if you have an emergency, an electrical emergency in the building. If you have a fire where you can disconnect the customer, we will do that. We will actually remove those meters in residential buildings to cut the electrical power. We can remove those meters. Okay. Something else that you might see. This is just another picture of this green picture, the one up in the upper left-hand corner. That's just another picture here of what's in the green there. Okay, down in the lower left-hand corner, that's another type of step-down transformer. I've seen some of those in Kenya. That might be stepping power down from a higher voltage to an intermediate voltage before it actually steps it down to the customer voltage. So that's just an intermediate step down transformer. This is another type of transformer you might see out in the neighborhoods. Okay. Get in and talk a little bit about some emergency situations you guys might see. Okay, substations. So we talked a little bit about the substations. The subs, they're carrying a lot of power. That picture of that substation that I showed you, that's just a very small one. They can be very large. They can be carrying a lot more power than that one that I took the picture of. That one that I took the picture of is like probably 4 kilometers from my house. And that's a very tiny one. So let me first of all show you a picture of what one of these things looks like when it catches on fire. Show you that video. Okay, so that's a substation fire. Obviously, you want to stay away from that. So up here in the upper left-hand corner, or up here in the some of the recommendations that I put, you need to be on the phone to your utility provider. You want to have them just making sure that power is disconnected. They're going to know there's a problem because at their control center, they're going to see loss of power. But you want to make sure that they're notified, and you want to make sure that service is locked down, is locked out by that system operator. They're going to have what's called a system operator, and they're in a big control center somewhere at a remote site that can disconnect that power and isolate power out from those substations. Okay, you want to make sure and verify the power has been isolated from that substation before you do anything with that, before you attempt to do anything, extinguish any fires. Okay. As you can see, those things can explode. There's a potential for them to explode, so you want to evacuate the area around it. Okay. If there's any exposure fires or any potential for an exposure fire, you can protect those. Okay, make sure that nothing else catches on fire around it. Okay, transformer fires, that's what the substation is basically, it's a big transformer. It's stepping voltage down. Or in the case of at the power plants out here, which I'll show you that. I'll talk about this picture here in a second. On the bottom, that was a step up transformer. You're going to extinguish it with foam. You want to try to contain, if you can, contain runoff water. So the picture on the bottom, that happened about 1.5 kilometers from my house. That's the power station that my father-in-law worked at. That's on the step-up transformer coming off of. These are two different generators coming off this big generator. And what happened? They had a fire, or explosion in a fire in this step-up transformer. Just to explain how this works, this big tall thing right here, that's one big boiler. So they could take natural gas or oil and boil the water into steam. And then down here on this flat part right here, those are turbines that spin, and that the steam spins and generate the electricity. Well, then the electricity came off to a step up transformer and stepped it up to send it out to the grid. And that step up transformer caught fire. So this is back when I was still the fire chief, back in 2012, when this occurred. At the time, I was still also working for the Wichita Fire Department. And of course, this happened when I was on my duty day in Wichita. So I wasn't there. So my assistant was there to take charge. And he did a good job, by the way. So when our guys got there, because this was all still charged up, we couldn't touch it. So the crew that was there, they had to call their operator, which was in a remote site in Topeka, Kansas, that was their system operator. They called them and said, "You isolate power out." In the meantime, they were busy shutting down the turbine, the electric generator, to make sure that wasn't working. So it was an hour before our guys could do anything to start putting that fire out. When we did, we had to call fire brigade from a local petroleum refinery, because they had the foam trucks and equipment to fight that transformer fire, because it had oil in it, and we had to have enough foam to extinguish that oil that was in that transformer. So anyway, it was an exciting fire. We had to also set the tower to our ladder to protect the turbine that was on that deck to keep it from overheating. So we had exposures to protect as well. So our guys did a good job of protecting and saving that power plant, though, and just isolating that fire out to that transformer. So anyway, so that was a pretty exciting night. They did a good job. So, but definitely don't rush into a fire at a substation like that. So we can talk more about that at tea time. That'd be a good one to discuss at tea time. Okay. Lines down. That's probably going to be the most common thing you guys handle. You respond to any of this. Okay. Biggest thing you can do is to isolate the area out and keep everyone away. I know that can be a challenge in itself, trying to keep everybody out. Okay, you can see I have some arrows here. Just isolate the area in between the poles where the line's gone down at. And preferably the area next to the pole. So the area as well from this pole out to that next pole if you can. Keep that as isolated as well, okay? You always want to treat any down line as an energized line. It may be, you may have a good idea that it is the power's already down or shut down, but you still want to treat it as though it's energized, okay? Want to make sure, obviously, make sure and contact the utility company and maintain a 10-meter distance from any down line. Okay, the reason you want to do that, there's a thing called a ground gradient. Okay, what that is has to do with a difference in what's called the potential energy, okay? In other words, there's a difference in voltage between the voltage there and what's over here basically is an easy way of explaining it. And current will carry between here and your feet. So it can still shock you even though you're inside that radius, that 10-meter radius, okay? So it's a good idea to maintain a 10-meter distance because you can still get shocked. Okay, utility pole fires. Okay, that's another fairly common occurrence. So some common things that you might see as far as utility pole fires, transformers, especially if they're old, they've been carrying a lot of load, a lot of electricity going through them, can cause them to start on fire. Another example of what might cause a transformer fire, lightning strike. We just had that happen here a couple of weeks ago out in our community. We had a lightning storm go through and strike the transformer. So another cause of utility pole fire could be damage to the pole from a car wreck, building fire, something like that. If you get debris from a downed tree, something like that, that could cause a utility pole fire. So, biggest thing you can do is to just notify your utility company, let them know. Protect your exposures around the utility pole. Don't apply direct water to it, okay? Don't apply water to the fire. Just let it burn out. I think everybody knows what I mean by protecting exposures. It's just your whatever's around that could catch fire. And with the utility poles, I'll add something to that. Make sure with these that you don't have down lines around them before you run in. But yeah, just like I say, just make sure that's the biggest thing you can do is just protect exposures. A lot of times you might have a grass or vegetation fire that could be caused. So you can apply, as long as you don't have down lines, you can apply water to that, extinguish that. If it's a building, you could have a building fire issue. Okay, lines on a vehicle. I have a good story here for you guys. So you always want to consider that power line is energized once again. Okay, when you get there, hopefully that you don't have a victim that's been shocked already. Tell that occupant not to exit until they are told to do so. Okay, tell them not to exit until they're told to do so. The utility company hasn't been notified. Notify them. Never step out. Never just step out. If you step out, what's going to happen? You are completing what's called the path to ground, okay? That electricity will pass through your body and you will get shocked, okay? So instead, you want to jump, okay? That will prevent you from completing that path to ground, okay? Now, my story here with that picture, this is a harvesting machine. This is a combine. This happened a couple of years ago in our area. The farmer was out harvesting his crop. He had, like a lot of farmers do, they will take family members, other people, for a ride. He had his daughter and grandchild in the cab. They were riding with him as he was harvesting crop. He turned as he was completing a strip in the field. He turned, and when he turned, this is an auger that allows him to dump crop from the storage bin. That auger caught that power line right there, and brought that power line down, and that went to ground. Okay, we were called. We got there. Luckily, they were still in the cab of that combine. The back part of the combine was on fire. We had notified the utility company. They had a crew that was a long ways away. We told them, stay in the cab as long as you can. We were hoping that they would get there before we had to get them out. We told them, stay in the cab as long as you can. and we'll try to get you out. We were hoping that the utility company could get there and shut the power off, but finally we had to make the decision to get them out because the combine was on fire. These combines are made with a lot of fiberglass plus the rubber and the tires, so it was the fire was rapidly advancing. So what we did, firefighters went to this the ladder up here, and he tossed the young child to one of the firefighters, got the child off, the daughter jumped off, and then he jumped off, and they all jumped to safety. And then we were able to put the fire out. In the meantime, the fuel tank had ruptured. We had to put foam on the fuel tank to extinguish the fuel. And then we had to finish once the utility company got there and cut the power, then we were able to finish extinguishing the combine. So that was a very exciting call as well. But because they followed our directions, nobody got hurt. Nobody was electrocuted. Okay, ladder safety. Okay, because you guys work with ladders, this is an important lesson to learn here. Okay, always look, especially when you're in a confined area around a lot of buildings. Always look. Rule of thumb, around the distribution lines. Around the distribution lines, 3 meters minimum distance. Okay, 3 meters when you're moving a ladder around. If you're around a transmission line, 6 meters. Okay, I know of one instance in my area about 150 kilometers, a little town about 150 kilometers away. A firefighter was electrocuted because they weren't watching. Set a ladder and he went right to ground and electrocuted him. Okay, so want to address a little bit informal settlements. So as we all know, in the informal settlements, a lot of illegal connections. With the illegal connections, we have a lot of poor, bad connections. This one I think I shot this one in Thika. I shot that picture. But like I said, with those poor connections, you can have electrical shorts, which that creates a fire hazard. In addition, once you have that short, that can actually, because of the nature of the iron sheets that these are constructed, these informal settlements are constructed out of, that can actually energize the whole structure, or actually the whole block, because of the way they're tied together sometimes. So one thing you can do, you can use a fog stream if you have to go in and fight fire in there. What a fog stream affords you is, because you're using water droplets in that fog stream instead of one solid stream, you're less likely to go to ground. So that keeps you from being less likely to get shocked. Try to get people out of their homes if possible. I know people It's going to be hard sometimes to get people out of their homes because they want to protect their valuables, but try to get everybody out of their homes to keep them from getting electrocuted, and try to get the power company, get the utility company involved. Okay. With that, any questions?
Go ahead, Mustafa.
All right. Thank you very much, Chief Brad.
You're welcome.
In the first place, I have to thank you for the presentation because it has been very educative to some of us because it has tackled a lot of areas, more especially in the area of informal settlements. It is really true that in the illegal settlements, you find some illegal connections of power, whereby sometimes you would not know that there is a wire passing underground or somewhere. So it has given us a limelight on how we can be working in such areas. But my question is not related much into the power lines, but has something to do with electricity. We had a scenario whereby we had a house that we assume upon investigating that the fire of the house was caused due to the power surge. But now we're failing to come up with reasons to justify the fact that it was a power surge, even though we have a tangible evidence of a wire that was cut from the pole to the D-iron, the supply wire. So I don't know. Can we have an explanation on how we can justify fires that are caused by electrical surge? What other indicators can we see to make sure that this is indeed a fire that has been caused by an electricity surge? Thank you very much.
Oh, by a power surge, or
Yes.
by just electrical short, or
No, power surge.
Oh, by power surge?
Yeah.
Mike, you want to jump in on that one with me? On a surge like that,
I would think you're still going to see a result short. That surge is going to have to overheat a wire connection somewhere, causing the short. So typically what we're looking for there, especially if it's copper wire, you'll see a separation in the wire, and that separation will be sort of a nice smooth round ball. That's typically what we look at as an indicator where the wire overheated and that copper will melt, and then it melts quickly and then reforms quickly. So it's not a sharp break, but a nice smooth ball on the end of that copper wire. That would be an indication of some sort of overheating, could have been caused by a short or a surge or something like that.
Surge 2. With a surge, you might see where it might actually blow something out too. Especially with electronics. You're more likely to see an indicator with electronics. Something that could appear to be overheated in your electronics. Electronics are a lot more sensitive to surge. So you could see what would appear to be, overheating in the circuitry.
I guess you would probably see some damage to breakers too.
Damage to breakers.
Surge, your circuit breakers where the power comes into your main distribution box. Sometimes a power surge, not only will those breakers trip, but they'll actually break. So that might be another indicator to look for.
Yeah. If you have, if you have another way, possibility would be if you have several different appliances or whatever that failed, different things that failed in the structure, that would be an indicator as well. Several
Right,
different
but in our
electrical.
All right, but in our case, we discovered that the supply wire was completely cut off, and but at the meter box, the supply box where the fuses are, it was completely normal. So that is what is confusing us to come up with a justification. So that's why I'm asking to get more help from friends.
So the supply wire,
What did the end of the wire look like? Was it a nice clean cut?
It was like it started melting. It is a coated wire, and the coating started melting. Then eventually the wire inside cut off completely in half. So there was another piece suspending to the house and the other piece suspending from the pole. But still more, looking at the meter box, we did not see any damage except for the damages that we saw in the house, within the conduits of the house, and the socket breakers, the socket breaker that was the boards, the board that was the socket breaker. So in the same vein, there was an iron plugged in. It is proven that there was a power cut. There was short of supply of power. Then someone was ironing, and they left the iron and switched off. Then left because there was no power. But when the power was being restored, we suspect that there was a high voltage coming in. And again, there was some sign that where the iron was, there could have been the very source of another fire. So we are looking at two pictures here.
Yeah.
But we're failing to justify it fully, knowing the fact that if we leave it to the service provider, if we push it towards the service provider as its problem, we may not be able to justify it, maybe if it goes to the court or something. So this is where we want to be careful and seek more help from others. Yeah.
I'll take a look around and see what I can find and see if I can forward you some other information.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like so. There was no damage. There was no damage to the service coming into the structure. That's what you were saying. So you were saying that there is no damage to the service, to the electrical service coming into the structure.
There was a damage on the supply wire from the service provider, but there was no damage on the meter box.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there was some damage to the wire coming in to the service wire.
Yes.
From the pole coming in.
Yes, okay. It was cut into half. But now, looking at the meter box, we could not find any traces of shorting or something. The meter box was just completely intact.
Yeah. But if there was damage to the service, so that, I mean, that could cause, especially if that wire was nicked, if you were saying that there was damage to the wire and it was nicked, if it wasn't making a complete connection,
it was completely disconnected. It was cut off.
Okay. And that's 3-phase, right? Yeah, you guys have 3-phase.
No, it was a residential building.
Okay, it's residential.
Yeah. I will try to share some photos with Chief Mike, so that maybe he can have a picture of what we're talking about.
Yeah, sure. Do that.
All right, thank you.
I see we've got a couple other questions, but hold those for just a moment. Let me wrap up the formal portion of our training because we're at the 1 hour mark here. With a big thank you to Brad for coming and leading today's class. Lots of really good information to share with us at a subject that we don't think a lot about, but can be really dangerous to us. And thanks to all of you for taking time out of your schedules to come and join us. We much appreciate you spending your time in your bundles to further your education and get better at serving your community. So I thank you for that as well. We've got plenty of seats here, so I invite you please to invite your colleagues, and we'll see you all again next week.